These are the list of things that Odyssey does better than Valhalla. Yes, I am saying that. And no, I am not at gunpoint right now. Now, to anyone who has been on my channel, which, by the way, subscribe, because, if anyone has been on my channel, you know my absolute disregard for Odyssey, absolute distaste, even hate for some parts. But even I have to admit, it did do some things better. And this is the video where I detail everything that Odyssey does better than Valhalla. In fact, some of these things that Odyssey did are better than pretty much every game in the franchise. I'm going to get to all of that. Now, right in the beginning though, starting with, Odyssey. So, right in the beginning, I would start with the RPG systems. Now, when I talk about RPG systems, I don't mean the story, because the story in Odyssey sucks. And that is one of the reasons why I absolutely hate Odyssey. But what I'm actually talking about is the gameplay systems. Now, Odyssey is grindy, Valhalla is grindy. Now, if you are someone who is saying like, oh, I loved Odyssey, but I hated Valhalla because it's grindy, or vice versa, you are simply arguing semantics, because they are essentially the same system, just with a slightly different approach to it. Now, if I have to describe what Odyssey does better than Valhalla, I have to first describe what Valhalla does wrong, and that's my first point. Now, in terms of the RPG, now we saw in Valhalla that once we level up, so like there is a small bar that kind of counts how much XP you have. So now once we level up in that, once that bar gets filled up, we get 2 experience points, unless and until you are like full power level. So usually we get 2 experience points, 2 ability points. So now what happens is we take those 2 ability points and then we invest those in the skill graph. Now, when I started Valhalla and when I actually looked at that skill graph, I was like, yeah, finally, this is a good RPG skill graph. But the more I played the game, and especially now that I'm nearing finishing the game, now I've already finished the game. When I say I am finishing the game, I'm getting to the max power level. I'm slowly starting to notice a few things. One of them being, there is absolutely no way to skip a skill. There is no way in this skill tree that you can actually skip a skill. You need to have every single node in the skill tree if you want to get to the max power level, which you need to. Because it's an RPG, the whole point of maxing out your character is that you max out your character. To do that, you need to have every single skill. Now, if you compare that to any decent RPG, you already know that system sucks. Like if you compare that to Skyrim, I don't know if I have Skyrim footage, and honestly, I don't feel like downloading it again. So I might not have it, but if you have played Skyrim, or even if you haven't, just go to YouTube and watch literally anyone play it. You can see that the amount of skill that game has, it makes it so that you will never quite get every single skill point. You will be done with the game long before you need to, fill out the entire skill trees. And then one more big important thing was that every single part of that skill tree meaningfully affected the gameplay. So like you can hold the bow in slow motion. Like then there are things like you can stagger the opponents with your bow. I'm talking about the bows more because that's what I played. Like I always think I'm going to go with a 2-handed sword build, but essentially I again during the game become a stealth archer because Skyrim, of course. But anyway, that's not my point. My point being that there are so many playstyles that you can go for in Skyrim. In Valhalla, there is no playstyle. There is simply you go into combat, you kick some people's ass, and that's pretty much done. This is like in Odyssey, the things that Odyssey did better than Valhalla, now I'm going to go into that, is that even in Odyssey, there were classes. Yes, those classes weren't particularly good. Like, the stealth class was not that good. The archer class I felt was really good. But of course, the warrior beats all. Now, the classes weren't particularly balanced. The playstyles weren't particularly balanced. But they were there. There were options to actually do that. That is something that Valhalla does not have. Now, in terms of the playstyles themselves, now I talked about the skill tree in Valhalla. Now, what is the skill tree in Odyssey? Essentially, when the game launched and the mastery level stuff wasn't there, they were pretty much the exact same thing. Like, you get skill points when you level up, and you invest those skill points to get skills. Now, the one big difference in Odyssey was that in this case, your level was what determined your damage and your ability to sustain damage. Something that Valhalla removed. Now, in Odyssey, of course, it didn't really matter. Yes, Odyssey was extremely grindy. I am still saying that. But with the mastery levels that they did add later on in the game, you could change your game in meaningful ways. Like, there is stuff in the game where you can go for proper builds. Like, I personally have a 100% crit chance build with full health. But that also means that I'm sacrificing some other stats that make it difficult for me to play some other playstyle. In Valhalla, it's almost like it doesn't matter what gear you have, you can pretty much do everything in the game that you want to. You can play every single playstyle with every single type of gear. It doesn't really matter. But with Odyssey, it matters what gear you have on. It matters what kind of build you're going for. That's that. Now I'm going to move on to the second point, and that is the actual gear. And I would just like to say, in Valhalla, when Valhalla was first announced, it was said that, it's not going to have repetitive gear. It's not going to have like duplicate pieces of one single gear system. It's just that you are going to have to upgrade the gear. And I felt like, yes, that's a really nice sentiment because now I'll have a lot more attachment to my gear. Now, had this been executed properly, I do believe there is a potential for this system to be good. But one of the reasons why I feel like this system has failed, in my personal opinion, is that there are not enough gear pieces to justify such a system. There are 9 armor sets in the entire game, and 2 of those armor sets are actually like, one is the buy-X set and one is the default armor that we start with. So when you consider that there are just 9 armor sets in the game, it's not much. In fact, for a game that is going for 100 hours or more, this is criminally low. Comparing that to Odyssey, even though it has duplicates, it has a lot of armor sets. Because you're constantly getting armor. So even though none of those armor sets are really memorable per se, at least you're getting something new. Like, kuch to mil raha hai at least. And that to me is fine. Like, even if you're getting something, a little bit of here and there, that is fine. In Valhalla, there is just no sense of achievement because you get nothing. When I go from Valhalla to Odyssey, as I recently did, I feel like the gear system is a huge improvement in Odyssey. So they actually went back on that system. Now, there is one more thing that Odyssey does better than Valhalla in terms of gear. It is the gear stats. Now, of course, in Odyssey, it's a much more damage number based game. Now, I don't personally like these sort of games. One of the reasons why I never got into Diablo was this. But I have to admit this, it is still better than the gears in Valhalla. In Valhalla, in pretty much every single gear piece you wear, you don't feel anything different other than them looking different. You don't feel like the stats are really, changing the gameplay. In Odyssey, they do. In Odyssey, the gameplay completely changes based on what you're wearing. Like, you could be doing, so like, I have an assassin build, as you might be seeing in the gameplay right now. I am, going through the enemies with relative ease. By the way, this is the nightmare difficulty in Odyssey. So you might be seeing I have to take a few hits on the enemies to actually take them down. But that's with the critical chances. I just said I have 475% crit damage and 100% crit chance at full health. So when I'm actually, hitting those enemies, I am doing that much crit damage. The reason why I'm not doing more damage is because my build is an assassin build and it's not good for combat. That's the thing that I want this video to be focusing on. Now, in terms of that assassin build though, I'll try to put this particular footage here. As you can see, I simply one-shot that enemy. I had no issues killing that enemy and even one enemy behind that enemy. Because that's how this game is. So like in one of the gear sets, I know for a fact that one of those weapons is like, it has 50% increase to assassin damage, but minus 15% to health and armor. There's also 2 or 3 more perks like this that I have that essentially reduces my health and armor, but gives me higher crit chance, higher assassin damage, even higher all damage. And that is something that I really like about this game, is that you can experiment with different gears. Like, I wanted a proper high crit, high damage assassin build, and I got that. I got that with this game. With Valhalla, there is no chance of actually doing it. Like, yes, you do get some benefits here and there, but it's just not there. So, this is something like the commitment that they had in Odyssey to actually make it an RPG actually makes it a better game in terms of how it feels. And that is something that's a noticeable improvement over Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, the third point that I do have is the combat. Now, I have said this on record time and time again that I do not quite like the Odyssey's combat system in terms of it being an Assassin's Creed game. And of course, that is not what I'm actually talking about in this video. What I'm talking about is Valhalla makes some incredibly stupid decisions in its pursuit to be a realistic action-adventure game, which it is not. Now, what Valhalla does is that in almost every single aspect of Valhalla, you can see that the game is slower. Eivor moves slower, Eivor is slower in combat, Eivor is slower in dodges, Eivor is slower in parrying, Eivor is slower in the secondary attacks, Eivor is slower in the abilities, Eivor is slow in the stealth. Every single aspect of Valhalla, Eivor is slow. And when I say slow, I mean frustratingly slow at some points. In Odyssey, that was never the problem. In Odyssey, things are actually moving at a much faster pace. And that's what makes the gameplay slightly more bearable, in my opinion. Now, I don't like the over-the-top abilities that, Odyssey does have. But if you take the actual animations, like right now on your screen, you should be seeing me just swinging the sword from Odyssey. And now you should be seeing me using whatever weapon I have from Valhalla. And immediately you can see the difference. You can see that, Valhalla is considerably slower. And that does, you would think that, oh, maybe it's slower but more methodical. It's not. It's still the same system from Odyssey that they ported over to Valhalla. And so in doing that, you actually make the combat feel even more clunkier than it has ever done. Like, I still believe Origins was a good sweet spot between what we want from Assassin's Creed and what a proper combat system should be. In fact, if you do want to see a proper combat system, look at Sekiro with how it deals with the human enemies. I'm not saying it should be as difficult as Sekiro, but I feel like Sekiro does it really well. Look at Sekiro. Look at Ghost of Tsushima. Like, they are not the similar combat system, but they have really good combat systems that might actually suit Assassin's Creed. So in that way also, Odyssey is better than Valhalla. Now, I've already made a video saying, why Valhalla succeeded where Odyssey failed, but that was the story department. In gameplay, Odyssey is superior in almost every single aspect, bar one. And that one is the stealth, because of course, I don't care how broken it is, there were more options in stealth in Valhalla than there were in Odyssey. So I'm going to give that to Valhalla. But other than that, really in the gameplay department, Valhalla has nothing over Odyssey. And it's a real shame because they could have had something really amazing here. Now, as to how I would fix Valhalla, I feel like instead of making this video longer than it needs to be, I feel like I'll just make another video on that. And so, again, subscribe to my channel for that. Ow. That pretty much brings about the end of this video. Now, I want to say a few other things that's off topic. Like, really, if you're here for just that topic, that is done. This is me speaking now. Yeah, I won't have much in terms of gameplay videos in this channel for maybe a week. Now, I still will be doing the next episode of Assassin's Creed because it's already recorded actually. But other than that, I'm not going to go with the other episodes in the series. It's because I recently had some small surgery, like literally yesterday, and I still can't quite sit properly without it hurting. So I need to lie down for the most part. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why you won't be seeing gameplay videos and more videos like this, because it's easier for me to record and all I need to really do is, feature gameplay from before. So yeah, I can't really sit for hours on end recording videos. So that's why you won't be seeing gameplay videos from me this week. But you will be getting more gameplay videos next week. And of course, once Wrath of the Druid actually hits, I would feature that on my channel as well. So all that said though, I hope you guys enjoyed. And once again, do subscribe to my channel for more content. And if you do like this video, then press that like button. And also, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I will leave you guys in peace.